Hey guys, before we get started with this episode, just wanted to give a massive shout out to all of you that have been giving such great support to the podcast recently, particularly on the YouTube channel where we're closing in on 900 subscribers, just over 100 away now from 1,000, which is going to be a huge milestone for me and one I've had my eye on for quite a while. If you haven't subscribed already and you could get me closer to that mark, that would be greatly appreciated. Other than that, enjoy the episode as we talk a little bit about the Warriors' 18-point victory over the Pistons on Sunday. Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast after a fourth straight Warrior victory in preseason, a 111-93 victory over the Detroit Pistons at Chase Center. Another impressive win, albeit it doesn't mean too much in preseason from a team standpoint, but missing Steph, missing Draymond, both rested, and of course Andrew Wiggins still out through that illness. He'll return on Tuesday against the Lakers. You would have thought that this would be a bit of a closer contest. The Pistons were really playing their main guys, started their main guys. So for the Warriors to come out and get a comfortable win and basically have the game dead and buried by midway through the second quarter was quite a good effort, particularly given Detroit were coming off an 18-point win themselves over the Phoenix Suns on Friday. So again, no Steph, no Draymond, no Wiggs. Steve went to a good starting lineup that I'd sort of hinted at earlier in the day if Steph was going to be out, which I assumed was going to be the case after the minor finger issue on Friday. The Warriors clearly aren't going to risk Steph Curry, and it was probably right that he rest a game or two here in preseason anyway. Starting lineup of BP, TJD and Melton, Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, Trayce Jackson-Davis. So the four young guys, which Steve has really lent heavily into throughout this preseason so far, and they all performed pretty well. But again, it was kind of the bench unit, particularly if you look at the plus-minus, that really got the job done in this one. The likes of Lindy Portis III at plus 22. Kyle Anderson didn't make a shot, took only one field goal attempt, but it was a plus 21. Gary Payton II, a plus 17. Buddy Hield made 4 threes in less than 14 minutes. So again, as we keep saying, the depth on the Warrior roster is just so strong. Still huge question marks on whether the top-end talent will be enough to make them a genuine force in the Western Conference this season, but there's no doubt that they can cover for some absences. And even, again, in this one, no Steph. We know the Warriors are probably going to struggle throughout the regular season without Steph, but they've got so many guys that can play. When Lindy Waters is your 13th man and he's coming off the bench and nearly top scoring for you, 13 points, 4 of 6 shooting, another 3 3-pointers, He's a lock for 13th man of the year if that was such an award. There's just such a deep rotation. And, you know, when you've got veterans like GP2, Slow-Mo, Loon, Buddy Hield still coming off the bench despite the absence of Steph, Draymond, and Wiggs, I mean, it just goes to show you how strong the Warrior depth is. And there's going to be instances throughout the season where it's a bit of a curse, but I think when you're missing some guys, even the guys of the caliber of Steph, Draymond, and Wiggs, it does come in handy. There's no doubt about that. Some of my big takeaways from this one, well, let's talk about the three-point shooting again, which is becoming a problem. For the moment, it's becoming a problem for opposing teams because the Warriors are just shooting the crap out of the ball and just knocking teams out from the get-go, really. I mean, this game was pretty competitive to begin with. I think the Pistons had a 15-14 lead at one stage, and then the Warriors just decided to make every three imaginable. I think they started the game 11 of 12 from three-point range. Just absolutely unbelievable. That kind of catapulted a 27-7 run from that 15-14 stage, and all of a sudden the Warriors found themselves up like 42-22 or something like that. And from that point, it was, you know, the game was, as I said before, dead and buried, and the Pistons never really looked like winning it from there. I don't think they ever really got within 15 at any stage throughout the remainder of the game. The margin kind of just stayed. Oh, we've got a press conference of Trayce Jackson-Davis starting. That's a good segue, actually, because Trayce Jackson-Davis was probably the player of the game for mine from a Golden State perspective. I've been a little bit disappointed with just his presence throughout the first 3 games of preseason. Like, he's been okay, but I don't think he's really brought too much force on either end throughout the first 3 games. And this was kind of his real big opportunity back in the starting lineup, played heavy minutes, nearly 27 minutes, which I think, looking at this, was a team high for the Warriors. And he really took advantage of the opportunity, had a double-double, 12 points, 10 rebounds, 6 or 7 from the floor, 3 assists, 3 blocks on top of that as well. Connected a couple of times, has this nice chemistry kind of building with DeAnthony Melton, who had a game-high 7 assists. So TJD was really good. I want to go back to the three-point shooting, though, because that's what I was talking about before TJD literally started talking. So the Warriors started 11 of 12. They kind of cooled off a bit. They were still 18 of 39 on the night, over 46%, which, of course, is still very healthy. It's a problem for opposing teams right now, but I think it's also a concern for the Warriors, because at what point do we start saying here that, hey, hang on, this shooting is not necessarily fake, but they're getting their hot shooting out of the way at a point where it doesn't really matter. Now, clearly, it's good to see. It's nice to see, and particularly the confidence that, you know, some of these guys are taking the jumpers with, particularly Jonathan Kuminga, who was 3 of 5 in this one against the Pistons. That's coming off 3 of 4 on Friday, 4 of 7 on Wednesday against the Kings. So now all of a sudden he's 10 of his last 16, I think, from 3-point range, which is obviously not going to continue. But I think from a fan perspective, just seeing JK and the confidence in which he's taking his jump shots right now is really promising. Other guys like Hield and Lindy Waters are shooting the ball at just a stupid rate. And those guys obviously are elite three-point shooters. They're probably going to be guys that are above 40%, but right now they're like near 60% or over that. It's quite remarkable. And at what point do we start questioning, like, is the shooting fake, or is this something like the Warriors have clearly spoken about wanting to be a high-volume three-point shooting team, and can they make them at a high percentage as well? And in some games like this one, just run teams out of the building early on by just rattling 3 after 3 after 3, and really, you know, putting a space in the game from in the first half. So I think I'm a little bit concerned that they're getting like this hot shooting out of the way in preseason. I'd rather them be like cold obviously I'd prefer them to be hot, but I think you do have to be concerned somewhat that, hey, we're going to get to the regular season, and is this shooting going to continue? Like, Buddy Hield, Lindy Waters aren't going to shoot 60%. JK's not going to shoot, 50%. So I think that's a bit of a problem for the Warriors. But for right now, at this point, it's obviously fantastic to watch, and they're clearly playing in a way that is going to transition into the regular season. It's just going to come down to whether they make shots or not. And what I do think is that if they want to have a point of difference, if they want any chance of being a legitimate threat in the West this season, then I think they do need to rely heavily on the three ball, because, as Steve has said, they don't necessarily finish around the rim too much, aside from a couple of guys like JK and TJD. They don't necessarily get to the free throw line a whole lot, aside from a guy like JK, and Moses has been doing it a little bit over the last couple of games. So they really do need to rely heavily on the three ball, and it does give them, like, if they can have games where they're shooting above 50%, then there is really going to be an opportunity for them to be able to blow some teams away. And I think Steve is right in saying, yes, they have lost Clay, but they have added significant depth to their three-point shooting in the way of Buddy Hield, in the way of DeAnthony Melton, who didn't shoot overly well today, 2 of 11 from the field, 1 of 4 from three-point range. But we know he's probably going to shoot at least high 30s from 3 on pretty decent volume this season. Wiggs will come back. Steve spoke about wanting to have him shoot 6 a game. JK's the big improver in that area with his individual three-point shooting. We know Moses is going to be willing to let it fly. Pods as well goes 2 of 3 here after going 2 of 4 the other day. So there is a lot of three-point shooting on this roster. It's not necessarily all elite three-point shooting. I would say the Warriors only have 3 elite three-point shooters in Steph, Buddy, and Lindy Waters. And even then, Waters is probably not going to be part of the rotation come the regular season, despite having been so impressive in preseason so far. So I think it's almost like, with the three-point shooting, the Warriors giving themselves, in every game essentially, now they're going to be still good enough to beat a heap of teams, but even against the best teams, where they might actually be like talent-wise a little bit worse off and behind the 8-ball a little bit, but they'll give themselves kind of a puncher's chance simply because of how many threes they're going to get up. And if they can get hot, then they're probably going to be capable of beating any team on any given night. But we'll wait and see on that once the regular season starts up and once they start playing against teams in a real environment where starters are playing 30-plus minutes, because we still haven't seen that throughout the first 4 preseason games. It's usually, the starters play half or the starters play 2.5 quarters and no one's really playing more than 25 minutes. We still haven't seen Steph play significant minutes or Draymond. We haven't been coming up against teams. The Kings kind of rested their guys. In the first game on Wednesday, they rested their starters for the whole second half. Game on Friday was kind of, they played 2.5 quarters or thereabouts. So it will be interesting. All of this can kind of be taken with a grain of salt from a team aspect, simply because it's preseason. But there's no doubt that it's impressive that the fact that Warriors have got to 4-0. And I think, again, that comes down to the depth on this roster. When teams do go to their end of the bench guys for the last quarter and a half, the Warriors they're just simply better. Like, that's what it is. The roster, the way it's constructed, they just have so much more depth and quality at the end of the roster than most other teams. To get into some things from an individual standpoint, let's just go through player by player here. Moses, obviously coming off that impressive 23-point performance on Friday against the Kings. A little bit less efficient in this one, 5 of 14 from the floor, just over 35% shooting, 2 of 5 from three-point range. 14 points, still led the Warriors in scoring. Golden State had 6 players score at least 12 points in this one, which again just goes down to the team-orientated performance and not relying on any one guy, which, of course, when Steph's out, you can't really do that anyway. So that's certainly a positive, and again, just goes down to the depth on the Warrior roster. But Moses, solid enough, not as good as Friday, not necessarily as good as going back to last Saturday against the Clippers in the opening preseason game, but still solid enough. Still, played 25 minutes, and there's nothing there to suggest that I should go away from what I've been saying so far in preseason, that this guy needs to be playing at least 20 minutes a night come the regular season opener against the Trail Blazers on October 23. JK, bit more of a talking point. Now, again, as I've spoken about, the jumper looks great, and I think that overrides everything in terms of JK in the preseason, because I actually, as much as we love the jump shot, there are some negatives which I don't like about his game right now. So 12 points, 4 of 9, 3 of 5 from deep, 2 rebounds, 1 assist. Again, the rebounding, I said it after the game on Friday. He had 7 rebounds in that one. I was like, why does he has 7, 8 rebounds one game and then 1 or 2 the next? And yes, like, the opportunity to get rebounds is going to vary from game to game. Like, I get that, depending on how many, shots teams miss or make, whatever. But there shouldn't be that wide of a contrast. You should, with his size and athleticism, he should still be able to get 4 or 5 rebounds a game, regardless of how the other team is shooting the ball, really. It shouldn't be going from 7 to 2. Right? There shouldn't be that wide of a gap, because to me that just comes down to a mental thing and being engaged in the game and being willing to do those things which don't necessarily get shouted out scoring a bunch of points and stuff like that, but are still so valuable to winning. And still at the end of the season, we see how many points, rebounds, assists guys average, and JK needs to get that up. He needs to be more consistent because he is capable. So the rebounding thing is certainly an aspect, and continue to talk about the defense, which I think Steve is going to have a concern. Yes, the 3-point shot looks good, but Steve's going to have a concern with JK defensively at the 3. Now, yes, he may be able, having Draymond and TJD next to him may be able to cover that a little bit, but he just gets blown by a couple of times. For a guy that's really athletic, he just, Tobias Harris got by him a couple of times in this one. And I don't think it's actually his ability to move his feet. I think it's actually how he closes out to guys. It's just a little bit lazy. The technique's not great, and guys can just get by him a little bit easily. He also gets caught up on screens a little bit more than what you'd probably like, or maybe doesn't fight through them as hard as what you would like. So there's defensive concerns there with JK. Really, there's not too much. I don't think there's not anything great about his game right now, apart from the shooting. But because the shooting was the thing that we all wanted to see in preseason. That development has kind of, again, as I said before, like overridden all like the negatives, right? It's like that huge positive outweighs everything else, because I think we believe that, okay, once the season starts, once we get into a rhythm here, like the ability to get to the rim and finish at the rim kind of will come back. He'll get out in transition, which is just like a game today. There's very few times where he like attacked the rim or anything like that. Very few times he got out in transition and got easy layups, dunks, because that's the thing with JK is if he wants to be a 20 to 25 point per game scorer, yes, the jumper is going to attribute to some of those points, but really, you know, if you hear him with his athleticism, you want him to be getting like 8, 10 fast break points a game. Just getting out in transition and being able to get to the rim where you're unstoppable. Didn't see any of that in this one. And so, again, it's about striking a balance, because I can guarantee you he's not going to shoot 3 of 5 from three-point range every game. He's not going to go 10 of 16 across a 3-game period like he has in these last 3 games. So, again, everything, like, there's a lot of concerns about his game, and really the one big positive right now is the 3-point shooting, and that probably outweighs everything based on that's just what we wanted to see in preseason, particularly if he wants to be a small forward and play alongside Draymond and a big. Well, then shooting the ball is going to be the key in him being able to do that, and that's what we're seeing. So let me know what you think on JK right now, because it's really interesting to evaluate his game with this huge positive in the jump shot, but then the other concerns that are more minor and we think, you know, can kind of even themselves out as the regular season approaches and plays out. But they're still very real concerns, albeit minor ones, I think. TJD I spoke about before. Apologies for that. I just thought I'd start talking about him because he started talking in the press conference there. 12 points, 10 rebounds, as I said, 6 of 7, 3 assists, 3 blocks, as I said. Just thought he was much more active. Like, that's what it was. Just much more active on both ends of the floor. A couple of his blocks were absolutely tremendous, and that's something like he showcased in his rookie year, and something that we've wanted to see from him, because he's really the only shot blocker on the Warrior roster. And I think going into the regular season, obviously question marks on whether the Warriors will go with Draymond and another big. Well, if they do that, I think it's definitely still TJD in front. I think across the first 3 games, you can maybe make the argument that Loon was almost fighting to regain that starting spot from TJD, and we saw Steve go to Loon in a starting role. I think was it Wednesday against the Kings in that first Kings matchup. But I think heading into the regular season now, this performance today, and Loon played okay off the bench, no doubt about that. But I think this goes to show you that TJD can be. He's just more of a presence out there when he's playing with the kind of impact and force he did today, where he's being able to block shots at the rim, be a presence there, and also be a role threat where you're connected on a couple of alley-oops, which Loon just can't. Like, I've liked Loon. He hit a couple of middies again, took a 3-point attempt, missed it. But he just, he's been solid. But that's what he is. He's solid. As TJD can be a real force and impact on both ends. And if the Warriors, again, want to be a genuine threat in the West at all, then they're going to need a guy like that more so than your proven veteran who's solid, but isn't necessarily giving you the high upside that a guy like TJD is. So he was definitely probably the story of the game, probably the biggest winner, probably the best player for the Warriors, Trace Jackson-Davis. Melton, game high 7 assists, 5 points, only 2 of 11, as I said before, 1 of 4 from 3. Not concerned about the shooting. He's been very impressive over preseason. Steve said before and after the game that Buddy Hield will basically be in a 6-man role for the Warriors, which means that it'll come down to Melton and Pods for that starting 2-guard spot, you would think, unless Moses is a candidate, which I don't think he is. I think he's more of a candidate if, to start at the 3, if Wiggs isn't right to go to start the regular season and 2 games isn't enough for him to ramp up back into a starting role. Basically, it's going to come down to Melton or Pods, and I'd be 99% confident. I know that's a lot, that's high, but I'd be 99% confident that D'Anthony Melton will be the starter alongside Steph in the starting lineup for opening night against the Trailblazers. I think he'll be there, and he's playing very well at the moment. Again, the shot wasn't there tonight, or this afternoon, but he was able to impact the game in other ways, particularly in regard to his playmaking, and again showcasing that he's much more than just a 3-and-D type player. Pods had 12 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, couple of steals, another 5 turnovers, so that's 11 turnovers in the last 2 games. In fairness to him, like a lot of people I know pointed to 6 turnovers in the YouTube comments after Friday's game. In fairness, he entered with 12 assists and 2 turnovers in the first 2 games. So not overly concerned with that. The one thing I do have an issue with him is just when he does break the paint, he's never really looking to score the ball. Like, how many times do you see Pods like make a layup or anything like that? It's more so if he does get to the paint, he's always kind of trying to pass, whether it's a lob to TJD or more so like drive and kick. And if he does look to score it, he more turns into a fadeaway jumper or anything like that. Like he doesn't take many layups, he doesn't take many shots at the rim. And that's obviously going to hurt his efficiency for starters. But I think it just, sometimes he gets himself caught up and it's not great for the offense when he breaks the paint and he doesn't have the kind of notion to try and score the ball himself, which obviously he's out there. He sees himself as a point guard. He wants to try and get others involved. I do get that. But he's got to, again, try and find the balance between getting others involved and also scoring the ball himself. GP2 hit a 3, 2 of 3 from the floor, 5 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, a block shot. Like, solid, but I just don't think it's enough to be, as I said previously, I think he's kind of a plug-and-play guy where if you've got an opposition guard that's going off and you've kind of gone through your other options defensively in terms of Wiggins and Melton primarily, then throw GP2 out there. Other than that, not sure he's in the 10-man rotation to start the season. Slow-mo, 2 points, 3 rebounds, an assist, a couple of steals, a plus 21. And I think he's going to be that type of player where he's, again, solid. Numbers don't jump out to you in the box score whatsoever, but he's going to play 20 minutes and the Warriors are probably going to be a better team than their opponent in those 20 minutes. That's just like who he is. He's just a winning player. Again, the box score numbers aren't going to jump out to you and be exciting by any means. He's just solid, and you'd imagine he will be that way for years to come. Like, he's on a 3-year contract, $27 million for the Warriors. The Warriors knew what they were getting when they got Kyle Anderson, and I think we know that. And as I've said previously on these episodes in preseason, I don't really care what he shows me. I know who he is. I know what he's going to bring to the Warriors. Loon, as I spoke about before, with alongside TJD, again, solid. Like these veteran guys, Slow-Mo, GP2, Loon, they're solid. But if the Warriors want to be a threat in the West, then they're going to have to be, the young guys are going to have to step up, and those veteran guys are going to have to kind of take a step back and be more limited players in the rotation. Buddy, 12 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 4 of 8, 4 of 6. Just elite 3-point shooting right now. Again, bit concerned that he's not wasting it all, because we know he's an elite 3-point shooter. He's going to shoot 40% from 3 in the regular season, but you see all these shots going and you just think, just save them. Just save them for the regular season. It's quite unbelievable. But another solid game by him. I know I mentioned on a previous episode about Stephen Noah of the Sporting News predicting Buddy to win 6th Man of the Year. Well, now that Steve's confirmed that could be a legitimate option. And so maybe watch out for that. Either Pods could be a candidate as well. As a six, I don't even know who the Warriors 6th man is, or who the Warriors 6th man is going to be. It's, you're going to have Pods coming off the bench, probably averaging over 25 minutes. Buddy averaging over 20 minutes, you'd think. Slow-Mo will be averaging 20 minutes. Moses, I don't even know who the Warriors 6th man is going to be necessarily, the first one off the bench. Lindy Waters, as I said before, locked for 13th Man of the Year, if that was a thing. 13 points. Had 7 boards as well in this one. 3 of 4 from 3-point range. I mean, he deserves to play. If I was another team, just free that man. But it can't be at the Warriors because, again, as I've said before, you can say he needs a rotation spot, but who do you take out? There is no one. There's no one that is necessarily as good as he has been, as well as he is shooting the ball. There's no one, you're not clamouring for Lindy Waters III to play over Moses Moody, are we? We're not, he's not going to play ahead of a vet, he's not playing ahead of Buddy Hield. He's not playing ahead of Kyle Anderson, albeit completely different position, different skill set. He's just a guy that's going to play, maybe half the games when the Warriors have some absences, and he's going to play well and shoot the ball well, and it's all stuff I've said before. And that's pretty much about it. Nice to see Blake Hinton and Quinton Post both hit their first 3 in Warrior uniforms during the fourth quarter. Disappointing that Quinton Post then airballed a 3, or missed a couple and airballed a 3 after that. But otherwise, solid performance from the Warriors. A bit of a surprise to me. Like, I thought this game was going to be a lot more competitive, having seen the Pistons beat the Suns by 18 in Phoenix on Friday. So pleasantly surprised to see the Warriors win so easily, to be honest. Particularly, obviously, given no Steph, no Draymond, no Wiggins. Let me know what you guys think, what you guys thought of that game. Anything else to do with the Warriors preseason to date. Other than that, I'll probably be back after the game on Tuesday against the Lakers, which will be particularly interesting given that Wiggins will be back, and you'd imagine Steph and Draymond will be back as well. And then another game against the Lakers later in the week to conclude preseason. If you guys haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, that would be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at POK252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter. And other than that, I'll see you in the next episode.